tech schools and two-year education, I want to just put a plug in there for SHOP. You may not be old enough to remember when we had SHOP in high schools, but it's really an important part of the apparatus that makes success possible. And as you have already alluded to, that you can have a high quality of life and there's dignity in all work, and SHOP is a really important part of that. I come at this issue as that poor kid growing up in a single parent household who believes that education is the closest thing to magic. And the more we focus on education, K through 12, the more likely we are to have success stories in every community in this country. And that's exactly what we're striving to do. And I will say that without question. And unfortunately, it's become more and more clear to me that partisan politics and special interest groups sometimes finds its way in front of kids and education. And I will say that even in the pandemic, we saw relief bills that wanted to empower governors to make the best decisions that they could for their kids, blocked by my friends on the other side of the aisle. That to me just doesn't make a lot of sense, and it certainly doesn't make for improvements in educational outcomes for the poorest kids, oftentimes stuck in rural America or inner city America. They both share the same burden of lacking quality education in too many of those zip codes. And frankly, one of the things that's most alarming, Dr. Cardona, is that many of our public schools remain closed. And we know that the learning loss that happens over the summertime and in normal circumstances and situations slows down the learning progress for so many kids. So imagine 18 months outside the classroom. That will be devastating for the learning loss for too many kids. But at the exact same time, as we celebrate Catholic School Week, we note that there are over 5 million students today in private schools, and many of those schools are open today. 1.7 million low-income families send their kids to open private and Catholic schools. That should be the case today. The CDC has said basically the same thing, that it's really important to get our kids back in school, and that's something we should prioritize as a country. And private school education that is available for the elites in Washington, the elites around the country. And if you don't send your kid to a private school, you can send your kid to the best public school by simply moving into the right district. That is not the case for too many poor kids in rural America, and it's certainly not the case for too many kids in inner city America. And as a matter of fact, when you think about the promise of high quality education and frankly private school education, you have to look right at our current president, President Biden, and his kids, former President Obama and his kids, House Democrat Whip Jim Clyburn, Speaker Pelosi, Senator Casey, Senator King, and House Ed and Labor Chairman Bobby Scott all benefited from private schools and Catholic schools. And I've got to assume that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle work in good faith, but it does, to me, smack of a little hypocrisy, hypocritical that those folks were allowed to avail themselves and their kids to private school education. And too often, those same policymakers seem to make it hard for the poorest Americans to find the path to take care of their kids in the highest possible education path. And that's just not available for too many kids and too many of their families. I hope, Dr. Cardona, that you will take some time and perhaps articulate your position on things like the bipartisan DC Opportunity Scholarship that helps kids enter into charter schools and get a quality education where the graduation rate is nearly double that of every other public school in the DC market. So I would love to hear your comments on charter schools and maintaining the DC Opportunity Scholarship.
Thank you, Senator, for your passion and your comments and your question. You know, I recognize there are excellent examples of charter schools. I've seen many in Connecticut. Stanford Charter comes to mind. I know there are also phenomenal examples of neighborhood schools that are doing just as great work and are giving also
Absolutely
to succeed. And my passion really is to ensure quality schools, period. Making sure that we're not supporting a system of winners and losers where if you get into a school, you have an opportunity for success. But if you don't get into a school, your options lead to at least a belief that you can't make it. So for me, I'm a strong proponent of making sure all schools are quality schools, investing in our neighborhood schools to make sure that they're quality schools where parents want to send their children. We know most parents want to send their children to their neighborhood school. So it's really important that we support all schools, including those neighborhood schools that are usually the first choice for families in that community.
I know that I'm out of time, so I'll just say this, Dr. Cardona, thank you for your answer. Thank you for being clear. I certainly share the objective of making sure that every child in every zip code has a quality choice. Unfortunately, for poorer kids and minority kids and rural kids, that is not always the case. And I want to make sure that we make that playing field as level for them as conceivably possible. Thank you. And thank you for your a little extra time, Chairwoman Murray.
Thank